Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rear-view mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Let's face it, we're in business to make money and to make our business more valuable. How often do you think about this topic? How often do you survey the marketplace, both your customers and your competitors? Most business owners want to do this, but they're too busy in the day-to-day of operations. That's a mistake, and it's our topic today. 80% of business owners want to stop working in their business in the next 5 to 10 years, but most have not planned for that transition. Many need to improve their business first. Our guest is Laurie Barkman. She is a business transition Sherpa. With her firm, Small.Big, she advises owners on having a more valuable, sellable business. And as a partner with Stony Hill Advisors, a mergers and acquisition firm, she guides them through the complex process of letting it go. Laurie's the former CEO of a $100 million revenue company with an exit to a Fortune 50 company. With more than 25 years of C-suite and award-winning marketing expertise, she provides actionable perspectives to drive sustainable value. Laurie's also an adjunct professor at the entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University. Let's learn from Laurie. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Laurie Barkman. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks, Rocky. I'm excited to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Thanks so much for having me on the show. I call myself a business transition Sherpa. I'm a business operator who's turned advisor and M&A intermediary by way of 25 plus years in companies small to big. I've worked in startups, venture-backed technology companies, and very large global firms and everything in between. And most of my career is spent in marketing and the growth top line side. Well, when I was a CEO of a $100 million company, I was an outside hire, part of a long-term transition plan for a privately held third generation business. and we were acquired. We were acquired by a global Fortune 50. And that was really my entry experience into mergers and acquisitions. Now, obviously, that was a large scale. The company, I can share the number it sold for. It sold for $1.4 billion. Now, not all of that was my business unit, but as one of the core management team members, certainly part of the process, and went through everything pre-M&A and then, of course, through the integration on the acquisition side. And after I left the company, after a few years, I worked in private equity. And then on that side of it, I was doing investment deals. And again, on this interest of mergers and acquisitions and what does that look like, and what types of companies are right for a portfolio, and making those types of decisions. And so flash forward to a couple of years ago, Rocky, when I learned about entrepreneurs in this lower middle market space who have some decisions to make. And this is probably the only time they'll do it. You get one shot at selling your company. And as we all know, everyone's going to leave your company one day. So I really took an interest in putting it all together as an advisor. I'm really passionate about working with entrepreneurs to help them be successful and achieve their dreams after they leave their business, but also while they're running their business. Why not have a more enjoyable business to run? So that's me, and my firm is small.big, and I represent companies on the mergers and acquisition side as a partner with Stony Hill Advisors.
That's a whole lot of background there, in the sense that you've worked in a variety of different places at all different size points. And I think everyone's asking the question, how do I turn my company into something that I can sell for $1.4 billion, right?
And that journey took over 100 years as a third generation business. But it really, I love the story about the company. The original company name was Genco Corporation. And it was founded in Pittsburgh. And as the legend goes, and this was the third generation I worked for. So Gen 1 had a blind horse and a freight, a cart for fruits and vegetables that he'd bring from the railroad all the way up the hill and sell and go back down. Second generation introduced trucking and warehousing. And then third generation, who I worked for, that was the father of reverse logistics and took the transportation logistics segment into a whole new sector. And each level of transition in that story is about innovation.
And that is truly where the big money is made, is when you can innovate and do something different. I mean, if you look at the companies right now that are successful, and I don't know that they're profitable, Uber, Airbnb, right? They innovated entire markets. Facebook, Amazon, right? All innovating entire markets. So, and in this case, you've taken a company that was around a long time, and yet you still are able to innovate. So if someone's got a company and they're doing okay, they realize that they're stuck. Many companies have fixed margins. They can't always compete and raise prices because the market won't allow for it. How do we innovate?
That is a $1 million question, Rocky, right? How do we innovate? I can talk about it from a process of innovation. Innovation is a process, just like anything else. We should have probably also mentioned for the audience, I am an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University, and I teach a class called the Corporate Startup Lab. And this class is about mature companies who need to innovate and want to innovate. Many of these large companies have internal teams like corporate startups. And I was part of one many years ago when I worked for American Eagle Outfitters. I was part of the early team that worked on the e-commerce business, which is now probably by itself $1 billion business. And I've seen it from the inside, what it takes for big companies to truly be dedicated towards innovation. And so a smaller company that's more nimble can still adopt some of these processes that larger companies have, but they need to carve out their definition of what it means. In some cases, it might mean complete transformation of the business, and that's extreme. I believe that innovation can happen in smaller chunks too. And where often we start, and this is also with the class, it's a project class, it's master's level students, and these are pretty sophisticated teams, But we start them out in the same place, which is get to understand your market, get to understand your customers. So if you've been in business for 20 plus years, 25, whatever it is, 10, perhaps you know your customer really well and you have known them really well in general. But let's face it, the last 2 years, your customer preferences have changed a lot. So if it's been a while since you've really put in a process as a company to get to know what your customers' preferences are and some market dynamics, there's no better time than now. We used to say, get out of your chair and go talk to them. Now we'd say, just get on a Zoom call and go talk to them. It's really so much easier now with protocols. But nonetheless, create a process where you might do third-party research, right? There's so much information on the internet. You can just ask some really good questions and do some general research. But there's a lot of value you can get in primary research, which means use some tools to help you connect one-on-one or in small groups. So it might be surveys, it might be interviews, but create a process, create a protocol. What questions are you asking? How are you gathering up the information? And how do you learn from what you're getting back? And so there's a mechanism for that. So getting to know your customer, we call it sort of, voice of the customer process. And online, there's survey tools. There's other ways. Again, there's lots of tools out there. So don't be shy. Get out there and talk to your customer. The second thing I would say, Rocky, in this exploration is taking a look at your business offering, your service offering, and thinking about it in the sense of what makes it valuable and differentiated. And if the answer comes back that it's really not, that it's a commodity product or a commodity service, it shouldn't stop you there and put the period at the end of the sentence and say, we're done. From all the customer learnings you're going to do, you should be asking, one of the questions should be, why do you buy from us? If you're talking to current customers, and by the way, you might also want to talk to customers who don't buy from you. The ones who let's say have churned or they have left you are a great source of information. Why have they left you? Or the ones who made a different buying decision. They looked at your business, but for whatever reason, they chose a different path. Those also are great. And then there's this third category of they don't know you, right? They know your category, but they don't know you. Those folks also can be a great source of information. So what you're trying to get back is an understanding of the market, what customers' preferences are towards, and look for those opportunities for your business. If the company that you're running cannot change at all, then I'd first look in the mirror and say, wait, why? Why can't it change? If you don't change, you're going to die. I mean, that's the reality, right? And especially again with COVID, all the changes so many businesses needed to make from small to big, they did it. They had to be very nimble. They had to be agile. And this is not an easy process. This is not something that's going to take you a week. It's pretty strategic to think this way and to be vulnerable and to ask these questions. And guess what? If you only get back super positive answers that you get 5 stars and there's nothing wrong, then they're lying to you. They're not telling you what's really what you need to hear, which is the things that you're not addressing.
So let's break some of these things up. One of the things I really struggle with is surveys. And the reason I struggle with surveys is I find most businesses ask the wrong questions. And so they don't get back the real answers. And in that, I think having that face-to-face conversation is night and day. And, if you can get out and go put your eyeballs on their location and watch how they're doing business and see what their pain points are, that's truly, I think that's the best. Zoom works too, but I think truly understanding your customer. And then you made a point. One of the good things is if you are a small business, you are nimble. That is your superpower. You get to do things without having to go through 50 committees and processes. And so use your superpowers to win in the marketplace. One of the things we talk about is, ask yourself the questions. Knowing what I know now about my business, if I were to rebuild it, how would I do it differently? And what would I do differently? Or if I was going to compete against me, how would I compete against me to win? Because so often the business owners are like, I wonder why people don't do this. I wonder why they don't do that. If they just did this, they would win. But yet we don't take action either. So,
yeah, for sure. There's so many great examples out there. When I was at American Eagle Outfitters, just to give you one example, we did ethnography studies. That's a big word, but what it basically means is we would travel to the mall, and we would go to the mall and we would watch people shop in the store. And that was on our home turf, so we could do that pretty easily. But then also there were many years ago, we had a process where it was all worked out ahead of time because we were talking about high school students, but we traveled to some folks' homes to talk with students and their families and learn how they felt about the brand. And by one example, I was down in Austin, Texas, and I noticed that this teenager had taken our shopping bag and hung it up on the wall, like art, like a poster. She loved the imagery on the bag so much that she hung it on her wall. That really stuck with me as an example. Another example was we hired a third-party market research firm. And it was behind the glass type of thing where you'd watch them do something. And they were given the task to shop with a discount coupon code. And they needed to use that code online. Well, we learned that there were some spacing issues that were confusing people, and it was preventing them from using the card properly. But that wasn't our original intent. We were looking to learn something else. So that was an unintended benefit. We learned about this major problem and it was just a printing change that we needed to make to fix it. On my podcast, I have a podcast called Succession Stories. And I had a gentleman on who focuses a lot on CPG, consumer products industry, and he helps them with market research in a pretty important way. And he has a lot of experience in this area. We talked about this on one of my episodes, and I can share the link with you afterwards if you're interested. But anyway, he talked about a fast food, kind of an instant food product at home. And the ethnography study there was to watch a mom make lunch for her toddler. And it had to come down to timing. She only had so much time. And so the factor for the food wasn't the taste, the packaging, whatnot. It actually was more about the microwaving of this item and watching them talk, hearing them talk about their experiences. They uncovered the problem. And so I love your point, Rocky, about go to them and see in their world how they're using your product or service, because these examples hopefully are illustrating these items of learning. You don't know what you're going to learn, right? To your point about how do you craft a survey to really get back what you want? It's tricky. So that's the quantitative side. This is more qualitative. And both actually are quite important. And the order of operation matters. You might do both, but which one do you do first depends on your process.
What you're talking about in both those situations is friction. How much friction is there to do business with you? And I will tell you, there are some companies that have so much friction that people literally give up. And I'll give you a classic one, and this is because of COVID. I've never seen it this bad. Burger King put in new kiosks for people to self-order, and they're horrible. Like, I've literally watched at the airport, people were walking away from Burger King because the kiosks were so bad at it being able to order from. And I'm like, how do you do that? Why? Do you not notice that everyone's leaving you because you've made the process of doing business with you difficult? And that probably happens more often than not. And I think too often, it's clear that they have no idea, because if they had an idea, they would fix it.
That's right. That's right. So taking a fresh perspective, a fresh look is really important.
So I'm really a big fan of systematizing the business and getting the owner out of it. And I think that's a big part of it. Number one, it makes the business more fun because you're no longer the bottleneck. You're not the one who's getting all of the problems 24/7. You get to actually enjoy owning your business. And I know you say that being the primary revenue driver for your company can also reduce its value. Love to hear some insights on that.
Yeah, this whole topic is so counterintuitive. We are the entrepreneur, we're the founder. Of course they need us. We are the linchpin, right? We are so important to this business, especially if your name's on the door. A lot of people name their company with their last name. And it's counterintuitive to think if you're not involved day to day, that your business will be more valuable. But why? So why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons. If we start with your question, which is certainly on the sales side, it can be on the process side too. So we'll address both. Let's start with the sales side. So we use the term rainmaker. If you're the rainmaker, what does that mean? Well, you're front facing, you know all your customers, maybe you know them by name, you know their marriage dates or their anniversary, the dogs, the babies, and it's wonderful. You have wonderful relationships, long-standing relationships, and perhaps these are reoccurring nature of the business. And it's so important, especially when you get it off the ground. But as time goes by, you probably are then not able to take a vacation. What happens if you are out of your business for 90 days is a key question that I ask in the business assessments that I do to help business owners understand some of the risks that they might have in their company that they don't realize. When's the last time you took a vacation? How many hours a week are you working? We all have health issues sometimes, and that's a very difficult thing to not be able to step away. How many baseball games have you missed or hockey games that you weren't able to go to because you had to prioritize your business first? And that's tough. That's tough on your family and it's tough on you. And long-term, it's not sustainable. Well, guess what? If we flash forward and say every business owner is going to leave their company one day, if you yourself are the rainmaker and you have not created a sales process, whoever takes over your company is going to start from scratch. And what does let's just presume that there's a ownership transition in terms of a sale. We're going to sell to a third party. What is a third party looking for in terms of your business? How transferable is it? And if one of the key processes of your business is your sales process and it's solely managed by you and you're no longer there, then the gears are going to come to a halt. Everything's going to stop. So that's not necessarily someone who's looking for a more risk averse purchase of a company. That could present a lot of risk, which then translates to more of a discount factor being applied to your valuation, which means less money for you at the close. I mean, that's the bottom line. The other side of that coin, Rocky, you mentioned was the kind of the infrastructure and the processes, the standard operating procedures. And we call this the hub and spoke challenge, which is if you're the business owner and everyone's coming to you and you're the chief question answerer and firefighter and problem solver, and not just your customers are coming to you, but your employees are coming to you. They're not super empowered because they don't have the tools, they don't have the skills, or maybe the know-how. They haven't been taught how to do things. You've retained the knowledge. So again, once you leave that business, boots on or boots off, hate to say it, but that's the truth, right? Either you're going to be exiting your business on your terms or life's going to deal you a different hand. And if you're planning to exit one day on your own terms, then it behooves you to create a business that can run without you. And so as you think about your goals, this is oftentimes where I start with my clients. What are your goals? Do you want to be able to just put your feet up on the desk and run different businesses more at arm's length? You'll probably have more time back in your day to do other things like exercise, eat healthy, and spend time with your family and enjoy some other, pleasures in life. Or are you so wrapped up in the here and now, you can't look ahead, and the company can't survive without you? Well, congratulations, you've created a great business today, but it's going to be worth less to you in the future if you look to sell it.
You keep talking about systems and processes. Those are my favorite words. If your business should be systematized, it should be processed, and it should be at such a level that anyone could step in and do that role by looking at your manuals and your processes and how you do it. And I think people get overwhelmed with this. It isn't that hard to create systems and processes if you just keep it simple. And I think more often than not, that's the big key. Keep it simple. Don't get overwhelmed and just start documenting what you do, how you do it in the moment. And over time, you can build out these processes. So is these M&A firms, as other people come and look to buy businesses, and in today's world, money is flowing so fast. It seems like everybody's trying to roll up businesses left and right, which is creating nice buyouts for the entrepreneurs who are selling out. What are the main factors that they're looking at that determine the business's value?
Well, there are core drivers that determine business value. We can talk, there's 8 of them and we can talk about them. But the key, Rocky, is knowing ahead of time what motivates each type of seller. So I'll talk about the value drivers and I'll talk about the types of sellers. And then I think the magic is when we can do what I call a market value study to try to match it up. And then if we have the luxury of time on our hands, that's huge information as a business owner to know for which types of sellers are they more motivated towards different value drivers, right? It's this kind of a giant matrix. But again, I'll answer the question in parts. So the first part is, what drives the value of a business? And if we take the corollary of that, which is what presents more risk in a business, right? So the first thing is size. Size does matter. Smaller companies are perceived to be more risky and they will have lower valuations. Typically what we see here is the under 5 million, certainly under $1 million. So if you have a business that we call more of a Main Street business, under $1 million in revenue, even if you've been around 10 years or longer, it's still seen as more risky because they tend to be more owner oriented. And for all the reasons we just talked about a moment ago, it presents more risk to a transition. The second dynamic of the second value driver is growth potential. And so not only looking at the size of the business, the revenue and the cash flow, we're looking for that potential to grow. So typically when I value a business, I do valuations. So, and I'm sure, you've done many of them too, Rocky. So when we look at these, we look at, what's the last 3-4 years look like, the trailing 12 months, and we normalize the net income to take out expenses that another owner might make different decisions around. So we have this, what we call seller discretionary earnings, or SDE is an acronym. And so we look at that and we say, okay, well, going forward, what's this growth potential? And I like to say, how much field is left to plow? So there's an example of a software company who had targeted Fortune 500 clients. Now, they did really, really well out of the gates, and they got 2 of the Fortune 500, and each contract was worth $1 million annually. So they had another 498 to go. Now, in terms of their business decisions for growth, they could have pursued a growth strategy to go after the other 498. Or they pursued a strategic sale to a strategic buyer who they knew was targeting Fortune 500s. And it was an add-on to and complementary to the services they were already offering. So they had easily demonstrated that there was field left to plow, and there was strategic leverage and benefit from the acquirer. And in that example, it's a good example, right? You're going to go pursue the other 498. What's that going to cost you to go get the other 498? And in a smaller company, they too can demonstrate growth potential. When I do a confidential investment memorandum or information memorandum, and it's shared with after an NDA is signed and potential buyers taking a look at it, it's often one of the first questions I get, which is, well, can we talk a little bit more about the market? How many other competitors are there? And what kind of market share does this business have? And let's learn, what can I learn about their customer base in an aggregate way? If there are certain segments, are there more growth potential by segment? Or we can look at it by geography. So we could talk all day, Rocky, about growth potential. So you can grow in a number of ways. But nonetheless, what if we boil it down? What is an acquirer looking for, and how are they going to value the company? They're going to value it on is there a predictable flow? What's the cash flow in the future, and how are they going to value that? Also, looking at the history. The other drivers have to do with the product or service that's offered and the mechanisms around it. So, for example, it's differentiation. And we hinted at this earlier in our conversation. What is differentiable about your business? Is it Is it the branding? Is it your customer database? Your list inherently makes you more differentiated of who you've targeted and how you've cultivated those relationships. Is it the nature of how you've packaged your service to be focused in a certain niche area for a certain marketplace? One example for anyone listening, I was a customer, so I love this story, but it was nanny pay. And a woman was an accountant and she had a nanny to pay, and she, the QuickBooks of the world didn't suit her and they didn't want to, she was too small of a fish. So she created a product called Nanny Pay, and I am still using that product. They got bought by care.com for like $45 million. And she had only about 10,000 clients, but they were sticky. And she showed care.com how valuable she could be to the care.com network. If care.com could only convert just 10%, it was like a huge incremental boost to the value of the business. So that's another success story. And that also is an example of the field left to plow. And there's a bunch of other examples, Rocky, in terms of the value drivers, just at a high level. It includes things that we were talking about, the hub and spoke challenge of the business being able to thrive without you. It takes a look at the risks associated with risks. Are you too concentrated in your customer list in certain segments? Is any one customer more than 15% of your revenue, as an example? There's different heuristics we look at. Another example is with employees. Do you have risk for your most important people? If you're out of the business, who else is going to be there to run it? And a lot of times, especially in private equity, they don't have management teams staffed and ready to go. They need people who want to come with the business and do the integration. And so to my earlier point about, well, who are potential acquirers? There's three main categories. One is strategic buyers, one is financial buyers, and one is individual/related buyers. On strategics, that can be corporations, that can be competitors. On financial, it can be private equity, and ESOP can fall underneath that too. And then on related parties can be family or management. And if it's an individual buyer, they sort of sit over there too. But if we work backwards and say, well, let's understand what's most important. If it's a private equity buyer and they're doing a platform deal versus a tuck-in, well, there might be different value drivers that are different for them in those considerations. So again, is there a management team already in place or not? How important is all the infrastructure elements? If the PE group's going to say, use all the platforms we've created, here you go, just plug and play. A strategic, if they already have a sales team in place, might feel a little bit less concerned that you are the rainmaker if you're walking away from the business. So again, I think there's a lot of variables, Rocky, but it's good practice to think ahead about who might acquire your company and then try to work backwards. Again, if time is on your side, to be able to pursue what's important. So I'll leave you with one last value driver example because it also illustrates my point, which is recurring revenue. The presence of a recurring revenue model in the business. What % of your total revenue is recurring? And that's not reoccurring, it's recurring. And the definition of recurring means it's contracted. Just like if you sign up for Netflix or you sign up for Zoom and you've paid for the account, you put your credit card in, and every month they say thank you and they charge your card or you've paid annually and you have to unsubscribe. Well, in a business, you can create subscription-like agreements with folks, even if you're a service company, especially if you're a service company. Product companies too. It just takes a little bit of work and thinking about how to do that. But the more recurring revenue we have in the business, the more predictable future cash flows are, and the higher multiple that will probably be put on your company.
The importance of thinking time is big for me. And I think more often than not, we don't think about our business. We're too busy in the grind. We don't look around and see what other people are doing, survey the marketplace and see what's going on. When I read books about Sam Walton, I think he spent more time in competitor stores asking the question, what do they know that I don't know? And constantly looking at them and doing that. And even I just had one of my clients was actually looking at acquiring another company. And just as part of that process, the thing that came up for him was, they're doing things differently than I am. It's interesting how they do this. It's interesting. So again, just even if he doesn't buy this other company, at least he's improved his knowledge of his marketplace and learned how other people are doing it. Because if you look at a company and you look at another company, they might be in the same space. They're probably doing things dramatically different. And so taking the time to look, to think, to ask, I think is definitely a big part of that. And so I always tell my people, create space so you can go think. And, here's some great questions to think about.
Absolutely.
So I know you do wonderful to help companies actually think and review what they're doing and help them to plan and navigate. And again, the more time they have to prepare, the better off they are. If people would like to learn more about your podcast, learn more about you, what's the best place for them to do all of that?
Oh, there's a couple different places, Rocky. My main website is smalldotbig.com, and they can learn about the services that I provide from transition to transaction, which includes exit value planning. And I invite anyone who's a business owner that wants to get a complimentary assessment of where their business is today. It'll also include an estimate of value, which is a great starting point if you have never gotten your business valuation done. It's more informal, I would say, but it's a great starting point. And when you also learn about maybe unseen risks in your business. So that's available on my website. But a shorthand, if you want to set up time to connect with me, is meetlauriebarkman.com. And you can go ahead and schedule directly on my calendar. And once we chat, I'll also send you an ebook, which covers a lot of the topics that we've talked about today, Rocky. It's called The Overlooked Owner. It's a great resource, and I think it'll help people's their wheels keep turning on a lot of the topics we talked about today. And again, just to reinforce, this is a journey, and I realize it's a lot to take in. And I'm the kind of advisor that will work with you over time. This is not a one and done conversation. And I really value building relationships with folks. So I really do hope that people reach out. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Laurie Barkman on LinkedIn. You can connect, message me directly there. And I look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you so much. And we will put a lot of that in the show notes to make it easy for people to find you.
Thanks, Rocky. It's great to be with you today.
If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. You have your own area of expertise, and maybe you want to spend more of your time doing what you love. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Hey, it's Rocky. Don't forget to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about life beyond money and how to live that ultimate life and become a better leader in your company. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.